The impact of caffeine on metabolism, exercise and fat burn, and appetite suppression is really well documented. But when we look at if caffeine intake alone can lead to significant and sustained weight loss, the answer is no.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show. I'm Dr. Ashley, and today we are going to dive into the topic of caffeine and how it impacts weight loss. We're going to talk about if it hinders or helps the weight loss process, and I'm going to talk about if you should consume it during the weight loss or maintenance phase. You know, I've told about my story throughout these episodes, but for those of you who are new here, just a little bit about me and my background is that I was a professional ballet dancer. I trained in ballet starting when I was a really young girl. I physically wasn't very good at it. My body was naturally not attuned to the process of it, and I struggled as a result. I counted calories like crazy. I exercised above and beyond the exercise of just being a ballet dancer, which is significant. And I still wasn't at the weight that I needed to be for the sport. And I was told that I was fat countless times. It was a huge struggle for me. And as a result of how I ate and how I treated my body, I had stress fractures all throughout my feet. I have got stress fracture in my back. And it has resulted in continued pain. Right now, I actually have a TENS unit on my back. So if my shoulder starts twitching, that's why. But my back just chronically hurts because of my dancing career. I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I'm so grateful for the way that it went, but it was still a challenge. You know, my dancing career ended when I landed in New York. I was chosen out of many dancers to go perform in New York City. Every dancer's dream. I imagined myself standing in the spotlight. Instead of that, I was being corded off to the ER, and I had no idea what was happening. I thought I was having a heart attack. And after a whole bunch of tests, the neurologist said that I was underfed and overexercised and that I couldn't do it anymore. That was huge for me. It's like Michael Phelps being at the edge of the pool, diving in for his Olympic competition and being pulled off and carted to the ER instead. It was 20 plus years of struggle and sacrifice, and it was huge for me, but it's what propelled me to go on and earn my PhD in sports nutrition and chronic disease and study energy metabolism and figure out how do we drop weight in a way where we don't shut down the metabolism and draw from our bones and our body, and also to understand the mental and emotional side of dropping weight. During the process of trying to keep the weight off when I was dancing, I went through periods where I would do every different diet in the book: Atkins Zone, South Beach, low fat, plant-based. Plant-based, I felt the worst. For some reason, it just really did not work for my body. I avoided red meat, and there was a phase where I would take different kind of diet pills. I took carb blockers, which just made me really constipated, to be honest with you. And then I also took these pills that had caffeine in them. And oh my gosh, I was jittery like crazy, heart palpitations like wild. I was low blood sugar, so I always had, when I was taking them, they didn't last long, but I had kind of confusion. I couldn't focus, which wasn't good when I was dancing. If I didn't say jittery or shakiness, that was really extreme for me. And so then I let go of the caffeine ones, and I took guarana, which is basically a plant out of Brazil that has 2 to 4 times as much caffeine than regular coffee. And that made me go a little crazy. And the wildest thing is it gave me a rash. And when I would step out in the sun, the rash would just go on fire. So for me, those pills just didn't really work. And you notice that I never mentioned weight because it didn't do a gosh darn thing to my weight. And so I just wanted to share with you my story because maybe you have a similar experience, and it is just my experience, which is totally anecdotal. So I want to dive into the research with you today on what the impact is for caffeine. So we're going to talk about caffeine's impact on metabolism, exercise, our appetite, sleep, and then how our genetics come into play. And then I'm going to provide you with some tips on how to incorporate and how much and when from a caffeine standpoint if you want to give it a shot. So number one, how does caffeine impact our metabolism? Well, it is a natural stimulant. That's why I was shaky and jittery and moving all about. And it temporarily, as a result, increases your metabolic rate. Your metabolic rate is the number of calories that you burn during the day. So if you can burn more calories during during the day, then supposedly you would lose more weight, right? You'd have more of that calorie deficit happening for you. How it works is it blocks neurotransmitters, specifically adenosine. And adenosine promotes relaxation and sleep. It also stimulates the release of certain hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. Those two increase your heart rate and therefore increase number of calories expended. And it also aids in calorie burn in that same way. It also releases dopamine and norepinephrine, which is equal to increased alertness and has a role in mood enhancement as well as increased cognitive function. So that's why some people can think better when they drink coffee. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'd be really interested to hear from you. Do you think better when you drink coffee, or does your brain kind of just go a little bit wild? Mine is the type of brain that goes wild. So when I drink coffee in the morning, it actually has to be decaf because I get those heart palpitations and I can't focus. I think it's so interesting how there's so much variability when it comes to caffeine and how it impacts us. So basically what caffeine does is it puts you more in this fight or flight state, and that's how it increases the number of calories that you burn during the day. But again, the effect really varies among individuals. So then let's talk about how it impacts exercise. What the research shows is that it may enhance fat burn and it may encourage your body to use fat during exercise. So how it does this is it increases the breakdown of stored fat by activating a hormone called hormone-sensitive lipase. Hormone-sensitive lipase actually is an enzyme. And so this enzyme is responsible for breaking down stored fat. And it also allows for the release of free fatty acids from fat cells. So if you can imagine, you've got these fat cells, it releases the free fatty acid from the fat cell, and then that fat cell can be broken down and used as energy during exercise. And it also may help to transport these free fatty acids into muscle cells for burning. Again, this effect really does vary among individuals. Hey, really quickly, if you feel you need additional support for your metabolism and blood sugar levels while dropping weight or maintaining your weight loss, I created a capsule just for that. It's called GlucoCut Plus and contains industry-leading ingredients to help burn fat, support your thyroid, and maintain lean muscle mass. Visit dr.ashleywellness.com or click the link in the description if watching this on YouTube, and use code ASHLEY10 for 10% off your first purchase or 20% off your first subscription order plus free shipping. And enjoy a 30-day money-back guarantee. Back to the show. So then appetite suppression. How does caffeine impact your appetite? Well, as I said earlier, it stimulates your central nervous system, and that can decrease feelings of hunger. It can also influence certain neurotransmitters in the brain that are associated with alertness and mood. It can decrease the hunger feeling specifically by reducing the hormone ghrelin. And ghrelin is a hormone that makes you feel hungry. I always remember ghrelin and growling, like your stomach is growling. If you want to remember what ghrelin is, your stomach's growling. And caffeine there may decrease the amount of ghrelin in there, so your stomach is growling less, right? Get it? That's kind of funny, right? So all of this is very temporary. The impact of caffeine on metabolism, exercise, and fat burn, and appetite suppression is really well documented. But when we look at if caffeine intake alone can lead to significant and sustained weight loss, the answer is no. The reason why is because one, the effects, like I've been saying, are really temporary. It's short term and they diminish over time as the body increases its tolerance levels to caffeine in general. Most folks who eat less around their caffeine consumption overcompensate by consuming more calories later in the day. And there's a dose-response relationship that's not linear. What I mean by this is that consuming larger amounts of caffeine doesn't seem to result in proportionally greater increases in your metabolic rate. So you can consume a ton of caffeine, but there's this rate limiting step where your metabolic rate and the calories you burn during the day isn't going to continue to increase. And there's also huge individual variability. And the variability is impacted by your genetics, and that impacts your sleep. And we know that sleep is huge when it comes to weight loss. So we don't want to do anything that diminishes or hinders our sleep quality. So let's talk a little bit about individual variability when it comes to caffeine. Some people like me, experience jitters and increased heart rate and a decreased sleep, but some love it with much more focus and calm. And the genetics do have a big influence. So there's a gene called CYP1A2, and it affects how quickly you metabolize caffeine. If you got this gene, you might be labeled as a fast metabolizer. This means that you can clear caffeine from your system more rapidly, and you're less sensitive to the stimulating effects. There's also another gene, and it's ADORA2A. This means that you're more susceptible to sleep and its disrupting effects. So remember that poor sleep quality is a top lifestyle factor that can stall your weight loss, and caffeine can really interfere here. So the way that caffeine can negatively impact your sleep is through sleep latency. This means that it can increase the time that it takes for you to fall asleep. It can impact it through sleep fragmentation, which means that it can increase sleep disturbances and it can increase wakefulness during the night. And number 3 is it can decrease sleep duration. So that means that you just have shorter total sleep in general. So now it could take you longer to fall asleep. When you are asleep, you keep waking up. And then in general, you wake up earlier and you've got shorter total sleep. So it's important to remember that the time it takes caffeine to leave the body is different for each person. But in general, a good goal is to stop consuming caffeine 10 hours before you go to bed. So basically that means in the morning you have your coffee, and maybe if you're going to bed, I'm not great at math, but if you're going to bed at 9 o'clock at night, and we want to have 10 hours before bed where you stop drinking coffee. So that means at 11 o'clock in the morning, you'd want to stop drinking coffee. Most of the research shows the minimum amount being 6 hours before you go to bed. You want to make sure that you don't ingest any more coffee. So when you have that afternoon slump around 3 o'clock, it's not time to go get a latte. If you need to go get a latte, get a decaf one. But you'll find that as you eat more protein during the day, more healthy fats, you reduce the junk carbs and reduce carbs in general, you're going to have more sustained energy anyway, and you're not going to need that mid-afternoon coffee and candy bar anymore. So you want to make sure that you monitor your sleep quality. How is it going? And is it impacted by the caffeine that you're consuming? You want to make sure that if you are consuming coffee, that you do so, or caffeine or energy drinks, that you do so in moderation. You want to limit it to about 400 milligrams, which is equivalent to 4 cups of coffee. Combine it with other strategies. If you're trying to use caffeine to help you drop the weight, you got to do it through lifestyle change and dietary change as well. And as I've said many times, you need to take an individual approach because responses vary widely. Pay attention to how your body responds and adjust appropriately. All right. I hope that this episode was helpful to you. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please follow us and leave a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and leave a comment below. I would love for you to share how you utilize caffeine to impact your healthy lifestyle, or how you've dropped caffeine because it doesn't seem to serve you. Share that in the comments below. If you're looking to help with your hydration levels and you want some kind of electrolyte that supports your thyroid, adrenals, and immune system, and you want something that has high quality ingredients that your body actually absorbs, check out my Electrolyte Plus mix through Dr. Ashley Wellness. If you're watching this on YouTube, there will be a link in the description. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, just navigate to drashleywellness.com and you'll find delicious flavors there as well. Remember, you've got to step up to make the change. Lead with your heart, train your mind, and do not negotiate with your body. I'll see you next time.